Okay, welcome. It's great to see everybody here for this presentation on group counseling with children and adolescents, groups for youth coping with LGBTQI, immigration, and military and family issues. I'm Tara Gray, and this is Jen French.
Hi, how are you?
And we have a PowerPoint for you that will show as well. Someone says it's hard to hear, so I'm going to turn my volume up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start this PowerPoint. It looks like we have quite a few today, and we're going to open it up for questions at the very end. And so if you can hold your questions until the end, we do have an opportunity for that. I wanted to go over the Association for Specialists in Group Work best practice guidelines. I just wanted to start off with mentioning the importance of ethics, informed consent, and with minors, limits to confidentiality, especially in a group setting where we cannot guarantee that all group members will keep information private. I also wanted to emphasize the importance of having clear group goals and a clear group plan when you're doing group work with children and adolescents, and to have an evaluation at the end. Our purpose today is to give you some research information and tips and activities for starting and conducting groups with children and adolescents. I also wanted to emphasize how group work with specific populations also is an example of social justice advocacy. And I wanted to just emphasize this link here on the multicultural and social justice competence principles for group workers, including our awareness of diverse issues and working with diverse populations, our strategies and skills, the processing, questions and activities, and advocacy itself. And we're going to be doing some of the processing, and this slideshow also has important processing questions. Some of the research I conducted was qualitative research on adolescents. They varied in age from 6th grade students to 9th grade students. And I conducted interviews on their experiences with cohesion. I had a diverse group of adolescents that described their experience of cohesion as sticking together or a tight bond. One participant explained it as, it helped me and myself get friends. The group just helped us get to know each other and make a connection and a tight bond. They said, we can help you get through this, and they did. Having people help you was pretty cool. Then I felt safer with the people I was with, and I gained a new friend. So I felt that that quote really summed up the experience that the participant shared with me about cohesion. So I just like to keep that in the back of our minds as we form these groups and look at how they impact children and youth. Other pieces they said were really important to them and the experience of cohesion was the purpose, feeling safe, the group leadership, and group boundaries. Some of the participants had been in open groups and some in closed groups. The closed groups had more cohesion throughout. However, open groups typically had a conflict or some kind of disruption in group process when a new student might join the group. They emphasize the importance of feeling close in the group, feeling like they belonged and were accepted, and associated positive feelings of feeling good and confident. They also emphasize the importance of making friends. And because these were school groups, there were friendships that existed outside of the group as well and lasted over the course of many years after the group ended. This table shows how those categories are interconnected. Another quote from the research about cohesion defines sticking together and talks about it as, let's see, this is from participant 6. I knew I was going in there to get help and help others. When I told them what's happening in my life, it made me feel better. It felt good that somebody wanted to make sure that I was safe and wanted to hear what I had to say. It felt nice going to get all those weights off my shoulder. When I felt close to the group was when we shared, and some of the girls told us stuff that they didn't tell anybody else. We became good friends. It felt nice to belong to a group. And when they talked about the group leader, one participant, number 2, said that she, the group leader, did activities, and that was a really helpful way to connect. I felt like the counselor was helping us all get close. So I think that that's one of the outcomes of the goals that we have in our activities is to help facilitate the cohesion and the connection between these young children and adolescents. Okay, Jen, unmute your mic, please.
Hi, my name is Jennifer French, and I'm an active duty military spouse. We were for 10 years. Now we are in the Guard. Back in 2012, my husband deployed to Afghanistan while we were stationed in Germany. And I had a kindergartner and a 3rd grader. I don't know if any of you are active duty or Guard or reserve spouses. What I want to point out with group work, which I think would be amazing in the civilian schools or of course the DoD schools with children and adolescents from K through 12. Thank you very much, Violetta, thank you. So there's a lot that goes on with the children at all ages. There's the internal feelings and conflicts. There's anxiety. They have volatile feelings towards the government. I remember my kindergarten son telling me, why does dad have to go there? Why are we at war? And then kind of starting back in 2001 and explaining all of that. And then there's the concern about the remaining parents' coping abilities. So when my husband left, a month later, I got pneumonia and was in the hospital. And the family readiness group leader had to take them for the night. So it kind of instilled this sense of, oh my gosh, dad's gone. Now what do we do about mom? And then there is, let's see here, the external conflicts. So at school, they tend to have difficulty in peer relationships because of the anxiety that's created. And then the disruptions in academic achievement where they come home and they ask questions like, when's dad coming home? When is this going to end? And they are not motivated to do schoolwork. And then the next thing, what I would like to talk about is how effective group work can be with military children. What they can do is come together and get with their peers and to understand their special military circumstances of what is going on. They have that space to share the similar challenges at home. So whether or not mom or dad is deployed, it does not matter. They can discuss things, whether or not the family members in the same unit. And then they're able to vent to each other and kind of speak DOD. And if you're familiar with the military, there's a whole different language in the military. And then, of course, if there's a death in the unit, whether or not it's their family member or someone else's. And that has occurred. There were 2 deaths when my husband was downrange in 2012 to 2013. And then, of course, the joys of homecoming and being able to discuss how exciting it is when dad and mom come home in redeployment. And let's see here. To go over how the group would run, this is my favorite kind of group under group counseling with DOD children and adolescents. There we go. You can have up to 8 members in there, and boys and girls, it does not matter. The selection is by self. A student can speak up, a teacher, parent, the remaining parent at home, or the administration. It meets for 8 sessions, which I think is totally feasible and totally appropriate. And then you would have the 4-month follow-on. You can start that 2 weeks or a month after the last session. And there would be, of course, work at home. So the parent at home would have to be willing to help the student go through that, which I think would actually help them a lot too. And then, of course, there would be a pre and post assessment to make sure that the student was willing to be in the group and willing to share those difficult feelings and willing to keep the confidence of the other members of the group, because the military is a family. And now as a civilian family, we see how much of a family we really were. And then, of course, the goal in the group and also in the military as a whole is to increase social and academic self-esteem. So the military is all about coming together and for the mission. And the mission of the child, the adolescent or the child, is to, to be effective and to cope and to get along. And it's the same thing with the unit. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, Tara, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So another really important area in group work with children and adolescents is working with English language learners, refugees and immigrants to this country that are struggling with loss and grief from losing their culture, their home country and community, and their family supports. So this particular group was researched by Steen et al. And published in 2018, but it shows how important a short group intervention was for young children, pre-adolescents in a school setting. But this could be modified to be in a residential treatment facility or a community mental health or community program. So this is based on achieving success every day. But the goals of this group were for newly immigrated young children and adolescents. It focused on the grief and loss of what they left behind, the feelings of being in a new country, the struggles of adapting in a new culture and a new language. And the outcomes of this group were significant because it really helped the young children express feelings such as sadness, loneliness, and hope for their futures. It also increased their school adjustment scores and increased overall their grade point averages. And another population that's at risk today, extremely at risk, with much higher risk of suicide, is our LGBTQI youth. And this research is pulled from Goodrich and Luke. They have a text or a book from 2015 called Group Counseling with LGBTQI Persons. And I pulled this research from chapter 8, specifically on groups in context, including schools, residential treatment facilities, and community programs. The benefits of the Gay Straight Alliance program were very clear and included 5 different areas of improvement. Young people experienced an increase in individual and family support after participating in a Gay Straight Alliance group. Children and adolescents also experienced improved positive relationships in their lives, reduced engagement in risky behaviors, overall improved their mental health ratings and scores, and improved resiliency and protective factors after participating in a Gay Straight Alliance group. Another group that's shown success is intergroup dialogue circles, which have been used in various settings and contexts with children and adolescents and have similarly positive results, some of them to be published soon by Melissa Luke. Safe space programs were also evaluated by Ratz et al. In the Seattle area schools. Those programs are group models where school staff are given resources and to help them deal with student bullying and harassment that they see in schools, and to help them become advocates and allies for children and youth who are LGBTQI. So those are 3 very positive research interventions that are helpful in doing group work with children and adolescents. Specifically, Luke and Goodrich reference these 2 techniques. Luke came up with the top 10 list, a narrative intervention, which is similar to David Letterman's top 10, where you start with 10 and move up to 1. Some examples of questions she created and used in a residential treatment facility for youth include the top 10 most favorite things about myself, top 10 most important ways my LGBTQI identity affects my day-to-day life, top 10 possible alternatives to any problematic behavior in my life, top 10 resources that would benefit me, top 10 worst reasons to get high, top 10 worst things about living in poverty. As you create your groups with children and adolescents, you can adapt these questions to your population as you know them and what comes up in your groups. Another intervention that was first used by Chen and Smith includes developing a self-portrait in groups with LGBTQI children and adolescents. This involves having a lot of art and crafts materials, magazines, quotes, maybe even the ability to print a graphic off the internet. On one side of a paper or poster, You ask group members to put representations of people, information, and events that have influenced their beliefs and values about affectual orientation and gender identity. Then probably on the other side of the paper, you can do this in the same group, or you can do it in a different group meeting. You can put the context and talk about how places, locations, and groups influence beliefs and values around affectional orientation and gender identity, and ask group members to put their creations and visual representations of their context on the other side. Some of the process questions for an activity like this could be, how would your self-portrait differ had you made it a year ago or 5 years ago? What do you expect to be different if you remake a self-portrait in 5 or 10 years in your future? What is not in your self-portrait that you wish was there, or that would be a positive addition to your influences? What do you notice on your self-portrait or that of others in the group that may signify the experiences of LGBTQI persons across different contexts? What differences are you aware of in the treatment of LGBTQI persons compared with perceived heteronormative persons? How do other identity factors intersect with this across the different contexts in which you live? And when we view the self-portraits collectively as the group that we actually are, in this specific group counseling treatment context, what do we notice? What pops out when you view the whole? So in my experience doing group work with children and adolescents in the last 25 plus years, these are some activities that I like to use across groups to help facilitate cohesion. Some of them are really for the beginning stages of a group, like Me Too or Fear in a Box. And some of these are really more designed for groups that already have rapport and cohesion and are in more advanced stages of the group. There's a termination activity. The trust fall is something that you want to be sure group members are comfortable with each other before you introduce into a group. The friendship bingo, I find, is something that you can build yourself on free bingo card generators. Or I have one on the next slide that is published by Girls Circle. So since we have time today, I wanted to try to do this. We have a lot of participants here today, which is awesome. But first, I wanted to see if we have any questions so far about the presentation, and then we'll go back and do 1 or 2 of these activities, and then we can wrap up. So I'm going to turn this over to Jen now and see if you have any questions.
I do not have any questions. I'm actually very eager to get to the group activity. Oh, at the end, I'm sorry, Tara. We can go back to the questions. So is there a list of DoD terms anywhere? No, but I can get you a list. There are a ton of things. The acronyms, it's the world of acronyms. So the quiz at the bottom, we Tara has come up with. And you're very welcome, Jack. So this is safe space programs help promote and create a visible presence of LGBTQ allies. Is that true or false? If anybody would like to speak up and give an example. So true. That's right, Melissa. Do you have an example for us or somebody else of how it does that? Okay, so we'll move on to English language learners facing immigration and refugee issues show improved school adjustment and academic achievement after participating in group counseling. True or false? Very true. Yes, yes. And being from Southern California, I would have to say yes. A resounding true. I was an English teacher years ago, and I had a lot of students dealing with a situation like this and a lot of different feelings and confusions and not wanting to speak up and being afraid. And it was quite interesting. It was actually wonderful to experience. The last question is, qualitative research on the adolescent experience of cohesion and group counseling indicates members feel a tight bond and feelings of belonging in group counseling. Is that true or false? Very true, yes. Yes, very true. I think that it's wonderful. I think group counseling at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school, is extremely effective. And one of my favorite parts about a pre-assessment or post-assessment with group counseling is finding a student who actually will say, I don't feel comfortable in a group, but I would like to meet with you one-on-one. That to me is so profound and so tremendous, because even though they may not want to participate, you still can help them. And it kind of brings them out of the woodwork. So maybe we can go to the group activities, which is, we have animal metaphor, which I love.
Okay, great. So we're gonna try to process this as a group. As a school counselor right now,
Daniela has a question. Yes. I'm very eager.
Go ahead.
Ah, great.
Okay,
great
that's
question.
a great question. So I think that in these group activities, you want to make sure that every child participates. So I think in the beginning, making it really fun and setting that group norm that everyone is going to participate. If someone doesn't really want to, they don't have to, but I try to give them opportunities. Like, if you don't want to use words, you could just draw a picture, or you could point to a feelings card. And then the slide that has the 12 group activities are fun ways to really help kids engage. I think friendship bingo can help a shy one. You can change the topic to any kind of bingo. It could be coping skills bingo, or it could be things I like to do for fun bingo. You can really change it to meet your needs. But I just make sure that everyone has a chance to talk every time. And I try to go in a different order. And once I get that group norm going, then I feel like the shy students or the shy children and adolescents will participate more. And sometimes I even have a strong group member that will say, wait a minute, Maria hasn't talked yet. Let's give Maria a chance. So you'll find that if you set that norm, that you can make sure everyone's involved. So the one that I want to do with us is an animal metaphor. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Violetta had said the icebreakers, and that's a great idea. And one of the things that I've learned is that I tend to look at the group, and if the first meeting, if a student just says their name and their grade, that's fine. And in the second meeting, when they come back, they're going to start to loosen up more. And that's when you kind of, you figure out, because it is such a small group, what works for them and what doesn't work for them. And maybe the next time you notice, okay, well, she seemed to really gravitate toward this student, even though they didn't know each other before, and maybe say, hey, why don't you sit next to her this group meeting? Just suggest things as the leader, and kind of taking more of an assertive approach that way, making sure that they're comfortable with that. So.
Okay, so there's a lot of us today, but I'm going to try to do it anyway. I think we can do it. I would like to do the animal metaphor, icebreaker, or group activity. So I'm going to ask you to think of an animal that describes how you're feeling right now and why. And we're going to take turns. I think processing this online might look a little differently than it would if we were in a room together, but I'm pretty sure we can do it. So I see that Daniela has a question about language barrier. And I'm gonna say that it would be ideal to have a translator in your groups if you're not fluent in another language, but because that's difficult, sometimes I use Google Translator to help me translate.
Tara, is it appropriate to have other students translate in the group? Is that appropriate to do that?
Sometimes students will want, or other group members are bilingual and they will want to help. And if that's a strength for them, they could help if they don't mind doing that.
Okay.
All right, so I'm just going to call on some names I see here because I think, oh, Violetta's going. Wonderful. Okay, so she feels like a bird, a beautiful bird that can't fly in a cage looking out since she's sheltered in place. I'm wondering if anyone else can relate to that thing and being caged.
Rachel can. Veronica,
yes, okay.
Karina, Caitlin, Jasmine. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else want to share their animal in the chat room? I see sloth from Nathan. Moving slowly, but moving.
Eileen said the same thing, right? Jack, yep. Oh, koala bear. Yes. Wanting to sleep all day. I feel like an elephant because I'm like hitting the sides of the doors and the walls. I feel like everything is kind of closing in on me a little bit. Oh, I like the tiger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and I see a turtle, like maybe having to live in the turtle shell and can't go out.
Mother goose. These are great examples. I love it.
I know I was thinking like I feel like a bear that's still hibernating, forced to hibernate, even though it's not really my biological form. Anyone else want to share their animal with the group? A panda.
Janelle. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I see a lot of diversity and a lot of similarity in the animals.
Yes.
Jessica says giraffe. Octopus from Karina. Okay.
Puppy. I like that.
Veronica
So
makes
true.
me laugh.
Yeah. A worker bee. Yes. Oh my goodness. Spring cleaning. I'm cleaning everything out. I said, oh, I didn't know I had this much stuff. Yes. An ant in an ant farm. It feels good to get this off our chest. Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. I did some online group counseling with some young children today, and that's one of the exciting things about being at home on Zoom, as we can share our pets with each other. So I saw a lizard and a little gerbil, I guess, and a cat. Okay, Stacey, a large fish in a small bowl. Yeah. And a little rabbit.
I agree, Lori.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing your animal.
Yeah.
So this is a fun activity that you can do across ages and across group topics as an icebreaker to help engage and to find a fun way to share and get to know each other. So another activity that I think could be appropriate for us today in this unique time is the fear in a box. So this typically would be anonymous, and each child or adolescent would have a blank piece of paper, or it might have a sentence starter that says something like, I'm most afraid about being in this group because, or my biggest fear about being in this group is. So we're not going to be able to be confident in this setting, but we are confidential. So I want you to type into the chat box what you're feeling is the biggest fear for you right now with COVID-19. And there's no right or wrong answer. All of your fears are very valid. And the purpose of this activity is really to help us see that we're not alone, that we probably all have a lot of similar fears about what's happening now. So Violetta has already started, and so feel free to type into the chat room your greatest fear. Okay, I'm reading all of these and it's really scary. So I can see that we have a lot in common in terms of I'm reading the fear of the unknown. That's very, very hard. And losing loved ones, not seeing family and friends, financial concerns, graduation fears, getting a job, health of everyone, direct hours for students, definitely. Yeah, like we're gonna forget how to socialize because we've spent so much time alone and not socializing. Yeah, and that helplessness, feeling of not being able to help in this time, not being able to help the people you want to the way you want to. Yeah, so I would say as a group of strangers of 20 to 60, I'm not sure how many of us there completely are here. We have quite a bit in common that this helped us just be able to share right now in a group online environment. So you can see how if this was anonymous, just an anonymous piece of paper that went in a box, and then you could pass the box around. Everyone picks out a piece of paper, make sure it's not theirs, and then reads it out. It's a really safe way to start to share and connect. So this can be used across group demographics and group topics and across ages and developmental levels. So fear in a box is an activity that you can adapt like we have here. It can be really cool when you're working with adolescents and children to help them start to connect and open up. So I'm wondering if there's any questions about this activity. Yes, okay, so I'm seeing here, these would be ways to enact the linking technique. That's right. So I'm trying to link what I'm reading in the chat room. But I would, I think it could be easier if I could see live, if I could see heads nodding and people agreeing, and I could point that out as part of the group process. But I'm also going to open it up to questions now. Where you as a group want to take this activity as we process it. So you can type into the chat room if you want, or you can unmute and speak to us as a group if you would like. We're just processing this activity with any questions, comments, or observations.
I have the question. I am wondering if there's ever a situation where you might have a child or adolescent who is special needs, maybe someone with autism, and how if you would change the group process to fit their specific needs, or if you would try and help them adapt to the current group process.
I really like that question, Lori. And I think that's something we have to consider in working with children and adolescents and adults all the time, is kind of pre-screening, knowing these children and adolescents before the group so that you can make sure that the group norms and the group purpose are going to work for everyone. So I've definitely had students on the autism spectrum disorder in my groups. And I just try to set up a group norm about what we talk about in here stays in here so we can trust each other. I probably mention it with young children every time we have a group. And with older children, I find myself talking about it when someone reveals something very personal and private. I just say, remember, so that I'm doing a lot of repetition to remind everyone all the time about confidentiality. I also, as the group starts to get to know each other better, try to use group process. So saying, okay, is there anything that you want the group to remember right now, so that the child themselves might say, yes, I just want to be sure nobody tells what I'm telling you because it's really private. So I try to open it up so that other students can help with that, or children, adolescents. And I try to really ask each other like how they've felt. How did you feel? And that's where it might be helpful to have feelings cards or feelings posters, so they don't have to say, I felt this way. They can point at a feeling or point at a card. So I try to use adaptive techniques because I'm working with young people at different developmental levels all the time. So I think that's a really good one, Lori, and I don't know if I answered it.
You did, thank you.
Okay, so Jack's question might be talking about working with adolescents or teens, but maybe it also applies to all ages. I think as a culture, we're not as great as identifying feelings. And some people in particular go one way or another. You know, they might start their comments or sentences with feelings and not thoughts, or usually it's a lot of thought, I think, and not as much feeling. So I try to always put feeling into what I'm reflecting as well. So I might be saying, I notice that you feel proud of what you made today. And then if I'm wrong, then the child will say, no, I'm not proud. I feel happy. And so they will correct me typically. I also point out the facial expressions that are connected to feelings. So when I see a smile, I'm going to say, oh, I noticed that you're smiling when you're talking about your grandfather. He must feel really special to you. So I really try to work hard on putting the feelings in there and offering a variety of ways that feelings can be addressed. I also like to do a solutions-focused scaling questions with children and adolescents, where I start with on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 the worst possible and 10 the best possible. What number are you today? What number represents how you're feeling? So that's something that 5-year-olds can easily do. They might want to circle the number that represents them. And once they get used to that kind of check-in with me, they might even tell me before I ask. They might say, well, today I'm a 7. Or the older kids that have more advanced math skills will say, I am a 7.5. So I see a question about kindergarten and pre-K, and I want to say that I do those age levels all the time. I had an online meeting today with 4 or 5-year-old girls, and I tried to do the feelings and the similar type activities. We did an art activity where they drew something that shows a coping skill, how they're having fun and coping when things get hard, staying at home all the time. So one girl had a dry erase board and she used that. The others just used crayon or marker and paper. And then, so we were quiet for a while. I heard a dad say, "What are you doing in there?" She said, "We're doing art." And then they showed each other and they responded to each other's artwork and what they were expressing and how they were feeling. So I'm finding that I can adapt a lot of my group work to the online environment now. Yes, I think having parents come is a good idea. Maybe not unless you wanted to design a parent-child group, which would be fine. And I think that that can be very effective when dealing with multicultural children and adolescents and families of different cultural backgrounds. So that can be very effective. You can design a group so that parents come the first time with their child and then maybe the last time, but not every time. Or you could design a group where parents came every time if you wanted to, especially if you're teaching parenting and attachment skills.
I know that in the public school, you have to get approval from the administration and the other group members. If the group doesn't start with parents and students, if it's just a student-run group and then a parent wants to come for one session or a half a session or whatever, there has to be approval before that.
Yeah, and I think when I see Jack's question about 5-year-olds in front of the computer, these were kids that I already had a connection with. They're friends and they already have cohesion and rapport. So we weren't just strangers starting out. We just moved from a lunch time meeting once a week to an online meeting once a week. So I think that that helped. That we already had that cohesion and connection. So I'm noticing some comments over here, and I'm noticing that we're getting near the end of the presentation today. So I wanted to ask if there were other questions or comments that you have at this point. Okay, so I just want to wrap up with some of the resources that we've offered and shared today. And I believe that you're going to get a copy of this PowerPoint and all the references. So you can, if you saw something that you really liked, you can look it up and get more details and more specific information. And also you can email me or Jen at any time with further questions if you'd like. Thank you.
And Jack, maybe you had said you wanted to know some of the acronyms of the military, and just email me and let me know what area. Are you talking about at school or just as far as deployment and that sort of thing? Because every area has them. So just let me know which and I can help you. Great. Okay. Thank you, Jack. Wonderful. This has been a really good group. Thank you for contributing, because that's what makes it so good and so strong. And good luck at home.
Thank you for all you do. And yes, so. Okay, we're gonna say goodbye now. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.